Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of the Valley View. And this week we have a couple of guests from the Salem Community Vision, Suzanne Kaltwasser. I tried my best, and Jeffrey James.
Okay.
And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about what Salem Community Vision is and how did it get started?
Okay, Ken. Well, Jeffrey and I are old hands at city issues. I probably go back about 30 years of involvement in community issues, and we have watched things evolve over time, and things have gone from good to bad to worse in our opinions, and several things have been happening around the community that got us concerned. And one of the biggest things that happened, in my opinion, was we were seeing less and less citizens' involvement in coming out to the city council, volunteering to be on boards and commissions, coming to neighborhood associations, and it really began to bother us tremendously. And then there were a number of issues, big issues for the city, that seemed to be happening without us really being aware of what was happening. I don't want to say that they were necessarily secret or behind the scenes, but they kind of like came jumping out at you like, oh, how did I miss that? And so we sat down one evening and began to talk about, you know, what was going on. And we decided, Jeffrey actually decided to invite some more people to come and have that conversation. And out of that conversation grew a sense that we had to do something. I mean, you know, we have been involved for so many years that it just felt unnatural not to step up. And so we decided to get a larger group until finally we had a community meeting about a specific topic. And that topic happened to be the police station that was being proposed, and all of the changes that were going to happen down at the Civic Center that nobody seemed to have a real awareness of until all of a sudden it was there, you know, and there was a bond being proposed and so forth. And we had about 100 people that showed up, and so we were enthusiastic about that kind of response from just a little bit of an effort on our part. And so out of that grew a real awareness that we needed to be listening to the public and encouraging them to get involved. So I proposed that we create an organization called Salem Community Vision, in which we could give voice to a lot of the citizen concerns.
And maybe shape the vision of what Salem should look like?
Well, there's been some conversation about how we should take some leadership role in that. And I think that that may come at some point in the future. But I think right now we're focusing more on trying to evoke from citizens, what is your vision?
Right.
How can we get you to speak up? Not just sit at home, not just worry about stuff or go, oh, you know, I guess I've got no say in this, when stuff is happening that impacts your life, and help them sort of express what they would like to see Salem be like.
And get some of that information out so that they can kind
Exactly.
of see what is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I think that's an important part of then planning, is to know what's coming in advance so that you can talk about it and come to some sort of agreement about what you want it to look like.
Exactly. That's a huge part of it, is trying to just get people informed, and you know that sometimes that's a real struggle.
Well, it is, and I don't know exactly the reason why we have less citizenship participation, and maybe you could elaborate on that. But you know, sometimes I think it's mostly the fact that there's too many work hours, frankly. I would like to see work hours reduced so that people could actually have some time to do things other than just work. And if, you know, with younger people, you know, you've got children to take care of quite often, or, you know, other situations
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, you're trying to establish yourself, so maybe you're doing 2 jobs.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I have a daughter who has young children, and she and her husband are working different shifts, and it's very, very hard. But there's more to it than them just being busy. I mean, if you have a government that really wants to engage their citizens, they find a way. You know, it's not that our citizenry isn't informed about things that they care about. We really feel at Salem Community Vision that information is being withheld and that the city is not, and I mean, I would even say the county and the school district are not really making a concerted effort to engage people. I mean, Jeffrey can talk about, you know, his experiences in the past, but it used to be different when, if you were going to do something major like a police station, you would convene not just a few people to talk about it, but you would convene a large group of people. You know, you'd want 200 or 300 people involved in visioning what they wanted. Other communities have done that, but we saw none of that, and we see less and less over time.
Do you have any explanation for why that's occurring?
I think it's natural for local government to consider that with the city manager form of government, it's more efficient to do the planning administratively, and then expose those ideas or those proposals to the public. And we think that's a mistake, because the police is a good example. They had 6 years of planning behind the scenes, and I would ask the city manager at the Rotary Club what's happening, and the city manager would say, oh, we're working on it. But the trouble was that when the meetings are in the city manager's conference room, and they don't expose it to the public until they have the renderings and the $80 million bill established, then the public tends to react against that, which is, I think, the fatal mistake, because they need the public, they need the voters to support, say, a bond issue, a bond election, and to build up that public resentment, which was quite significant and came out in how at 2 town hall meetings. The public were really upset about that approach. And so where the government thought that they were being extremely efficient, and they would have been better advised to adopt the ways that I noticed when I started working as a volunteer in the city 40 years ago, where it was more a democratic process. And Suzanne and I are both involved in neighborhood leadership positions. And I think we noticed years ago that there was a more refreshing, open approach, and government was more transparent. So one of the things that we in Salem Community Vision are pushing for is trying to persuade our elected officials to evolve back into that more refreshing, open, transparent form of government, so that they listen to the public. And it isn't good enough to have a task force that has a sprinkling of a few community activists on it, when it's dominated by, let's say, the chamber and the administration. It needs to be more democratic, and like the town halls that Suzanne has been putting on at the Grand Theatre, they've been so well attended, where you get 100 people and you get many people standing on their feet and having some wonderful ideas that the city needs to listen to if they want to pass a big bond issue. And we support these things, like a new police facility. We support the strengthening of the life safety measures at City Hall and the library, but not at an excessive cost. And we've shown how it can be done affordably.
Yeah, you know, I worked in private industry, you know, during my professional career, and that was one of the things, though, that I noticed, is that, like, management can make a decision about how they want to do things, but if they don't include the people that are actually going to be carrying it out, they start fighting it, you know.
Right.
And like, they haven't bought into it. And I would point that out numerous times. I say, if you don't involve the people in designing what the work's going to look like, quite often they'll resist any kind of change. And I saw that over and over again, and finally I started getting some managers and directors that
Right.
would realize that. And so quite often they would then start doing some of the planning with some input into the people who are going to be doing the day-to-day job. And I think it sounds very familiar, you know, that if you don't include people in at the beginning, they haven't bought into it.
Well, you asked what do I think has changed, and I think that it's a philosophical change that's coming, and I think you see it both at a national level, but also at it seeps down to state level, to the local level, where elected officials have this feeling that the public elected them to speak for them, and therefore they think I'm smarter than they are and I can make better decisions. And they forget who elected them. And and they have a tendency, especially when they get so many things that are very complex coming at them, to trust the paid staff. And they think, well, these people are the experts and we really need to listen to what they're telling us. But in the past, we saw elected officials who their philosophy was, I got elected to serve my community, so I want to stay connected to my community. And they would be out there, whether I agreed or disagreed with my particular counselor at the time, I could call them up. They were at my neighborhood meetings. They were engaged in both social as well as political issues within my neighborhood. The mayor would come and speak to the neighborhood association. She'd be out and about just talking to regular people and so forth. It really felt like it was us working to make Salem a better place. And something has changed where it's like you go to stand up there at the podium to talk to the city council at a meeting, and immediately you get this sense that, if you're not on our side, we doubt your veracity and, your right to be here. I mean, I'm appalled sometimes to see how people are treated when they're just coming to express a view and something that they have knowledge about or passion about, and they're just like, oh, your time is up.
Well, that's the thing that I noticed here. And I worked nights for a while, so I couldn't go to city council meetings. But when I did start going to some of them, I was really shocked at how people that would come up to testify about one issue or another were treated. And I've been to a lot of city council meetings in my life and other various kinds of meetings, and I'd never seen that kind of treatment, never. And well, actually there was one exception when I was at a committee meeting in California. I believe it was an assembly committee, and they asked somebody basically, why should we listen to you since you don't contribute to our campaign? They didn't put it in those words, but it was close.
Yeah.
And the thing was, it was captured and put on the news, and so then they had to be careful. But actually when you were talking about that, I was reminded of something Tricia Nixon said during Watergate, and that was, my father was elected to reign for 4 years. But it's that different kind of attitude about what you were saying is like, I was elected, so we get to make these decisions. But if you don't have a connection to the community, you're going to get tossed out.
Well, and as Jeffrey pointed out, the irony is that a lot of people are on the side of wanting to have some of these things happen. The police station is a really fine example in that Salem Community Vision wants to have a new police station. It's just that we want it to be done responsibly, both fiscally and socially responsible. And the minute we started to ask questions, all of a sudden we were labeled as naysayers and ne'er-do-wells, and it was just, oh my gosh, we're just asking cogent questions that any citizen who was going to vote for something would ask. And that's what's changed. That's what's really changed to me, is that when the citizens become the adversary instead of the partner And we want to get back to that. And so that's what we've really been trying to work on, is not so much opposing what the city government's doing, but saying as firmly as we can, we want to be partners with you. And we live here, and we have hopes and desires and visions of what our community could look like, should look like, and we want to work with you to see if we can make that happen.
And there's a real risk here with the police facility, in that if they put some plan out that's not going to be accepted by the community, it'll get voted down, and it'll be that much longer before we actually get a facility built.
That's exactly what happened in Eugene. Eugene had a similar process to what Salem's going through now, and their bond measure failed. They tried it a second time, so years went by. They tried it a second time. Salem's already been at this secretly for 6 years, invisibly, I should say. We think that their high-price proposal will fail, following Eugene's example. Eugene finally built the facility with all the funds they had, which was $17 million. And it's a fine facility, but it could have used maybe another $10 million to be a better facility. So we're saying may have a budget of twice what Eugene spent, of $30 million.
That should be enough, don't you
That should
think?
be
I
enough.
would
Twice.
hope so.
Eugene is identically sized population, identically sized police force, same number of sworn officers, same number of civilians within 1 or 2. And so why should their 70,000 square foot building at 17 million be dismissed by the administration of Salem, and the SEV approach of, well, build it for no more than double that cost? Why would that be thrown out? And they're going off to escalate that cost to a point where I think the bond will surely fail. And we're just pointing out that that's going to happen, and they need to listen to the public. So
Well,
it's tragic.
And part of the problem, I might be misunderstanding this, but originally it was supposed to be retrofitting City Hall and building a new police station.
Yes.
And now they're talking about just the police station?
Well,
Yes.
the task force that just wrapped up its work has that recommendation, and Salem Community Vision feels very strongly that we have to do all of the seismic upgrades. I mean, not only to protect the people that use those facilities, like the library and the City Hall, but the employees, but our investment as a community in those structures. I mean, we have to get realistic here in Salem about the fact that there is going to be, it's not even speculation. I mean, it's a fact. We are going to have a major earthquake. Historically, there's a cycle, and we're at the end of that cycle. And Salem is in a very high risk earthquake damage area. I mean, there's very few places in the Salem urban growth area that is going to not have significant damage in an earthquake. And you have to have your vital services up and running and stable. And so to have City Hall collapse, as they are saying, is very likely in a major earthquake. It's just frightening, you know, and you can't have the police at the bottom of that pancaked building. You've got to move them out, but you also can't have your city employees that run the basic infrastructure of the city, and you surely don't want to have children and families caught up in the library under those circumstances. And I would even add, we need to be looking at our existing bridges so that we don't lose that vital connection between East Salem and West Salem. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done as a community. And for them to, and this committee, to suggest that, we don't have the will within this community to do all of those things and just go on and say, well, we need to do the police first and then we'll do the others as we can. It's just frustrating, and I think it's wrong-headed. If you go out to the people and you explain your needs and what the situations are on the ground and explain how you want to address those issues in a fiscally responsible way, I firmly believe that this community will see that this is a good investment and they're willing to make it. But they're not willing to pay for something that's frivolous just because, this is where we'd like to have it, or this is what we'd like to include. They want to see something that's well thought out, that's fiscally responsible, that meets the needs, and that they can afford to pay for.
And that's a big critical point. And right now, from what I've heard, is they want to build it still kind of near City Hall. And they've kind of fluctuated back and forth, but I have not ever, I guess the part about that concerns me is I've never heard a real good reason for why it has to be there. They'll talk about, well, the police need to be close to the court and the City Hall, but there's other places near downtown or in downtown that you could locate that it's not a big deal. And a lot of cities, that's the norm. You don't always have the police station right next to City Hall.
One good example would be there's a property for sale at North Downtown at the intersection of 3 arterials. It's the old Dillon Honda site. It's sitting there vacant, and the parking's already in existence. It's several acres, so there's room for expansion. There's room for building a building there, including acquiring that land for $5 million. They could build the building using their consultants' figures for under $30 million. Now, why don't they do that and avoid building a huge parking garage at vast expense?
An underground parking lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe disrupting, if they're thinking of the block south of the library, that's been rumored to be their focus. That would disrupt, remove an office building, several homes, people's lives, and cost the city, $10 million, which is more than the cost of the Dillon that's sitting there ready for a police facility in downtown.
And,
Well,
and that facility would be much more easy for them to get to West Salem if they needed to.
Well,
Absolutely.
see, what we're doing here is what we think the public should be doing, and we think that the city council should be engaging in this kind of dialogue with the community. There's a lot of good thoughts and good suggestions that the public has made that really haven't been fully aired and thought through. But, I'm an eternal optimist. The task force did its work, and we can have an opinion about that work, but it moves now to the city council level, and they're the ones that are going to make the final decision about what's going to be included and what's the bond going to be. And I'm hoping, I know that Salem Community Vision has already had an impact. When we get people out and get them informed and encourage them and get them to engage in the process, it changes the process and it changes their points of view, and they see, well, maybe we do have to work with these people, and I'm looking forward to the next step where we go to the city council and we talk to them, and I really strongly am going to encourage people to do the same, to express themselves. If you see your city councilor in the grocery store, some of the councilors are doing weekly walks and tours. Bednar's goes out to
Minto Brown
Island.
I saw him this morning.
Yes, every Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. And I think that's a good thing. And I think we need to encourage him, because that gets back to where I was saying it used to be when you could know your counselor, have a conversation with your counselor, maybe have an influence on what they were thinking and so forth. And so, that's what keeps me going. Some people get discouraged and they walk away and they just want to be those naysayers. And I'm just not that kind of a person. And that's the vision that I have, is that we can get back to a time when people were engaged. I know people care. They just don't always know how to get involved.
Yeah, and I one of my favorite sayings is that, like, if you know everything, you can't possibly learn anything. And so, like, this is, the police facility is a big issue that's going on, but also you have a couple of other issues that are kind of important, I think.
We have.
Well, yes. Suzanne mentioned the need to fix the bridges and maybe potentially widen the existing bridges versus, say, 100 times the cost to build a third new bridge. We've been working on promoting the expansion of Riverfront Park, which the council are actually acting on, and Councillor Anderson is implementing or suggesting some of our ideas there to further expand the Riverfront Park. We're interested in ancient tree preservation. We're interested in historic preservation. The North Campus, the adaptive reuse of the existing buildings there, and there's a town hall meeting coming up that we'll participate in.
Can you give us the date and time for that?
I don't have the date. Do you have that, Suzanne? We'll
Well, there's one.
we'll put it on our website and
in
our
June.
Facebook.
In June, Representative Brian Clem will be
Yes.
having a town hall on the issue, and it'll be on our website as well as on our Facebook page exactly when he has the location and the time set.
Okay.
And then bicycle boulevards is a topic that's before the City Council now. We're supporting that connectivity of safe bicycle routes through the city, and a revival of maybe Salem Futures, which died under a previous mayor, and a few of us were involved in reviving the Salem Land Use Network, which is the land use chairs and people interested in land use and comprehensive planning. That's like an adjunct to what we're doing in Salem Community
So I
Vision.
want to give a plug for how people get engaged.
I think that would be a good
Yes.
thing to
We
do.
do have a web page at salemcommunityvision.org.
Or
and-
.com.
.com, excuse me. And we also have a very active Facebook page under Salem Community Vision. And the way we operate is that we don't charge dues and so forth. We just ask people to like us on Facebook, and that's where we share a lot of information. And we also listen to what people are saying to us. So at the end of this, I know you'll put up that information on a screen, but I really hope that people start paying attention, go to the city's website, go to our website, like us on Facebook, and hopefully we'll see you at the next town hall or meeting.
Or city council meeting.
There you go.
And I want to thank you both for coming in, because I think it is important that people get re-energized and think about their local government and what they can do to have a strong voice in the community and shape where it's going. So I want to thank you, Suzanne and Jeffrey, for coming in this week.
Kim.
And come back next week for the Valley View.